All right, guys, when it comes to what's going on in politics today, well, 6 million job losses, 15 billion in savings wiped away. Global market crash immediately. Those that are on SSI, SSDI, Retire Railroad, Representative Payee, all those that are on disability, as well as survivors and VA, your checks put on hold. Am I talking about the federal budget? No, but we're going to discuss what I am talking about, as well as we're going to be hearing from Senator Cory Booker in regards to why is it so important to have the child tax credit expanding for not only parents, but also 15 million grandparents. We're going to go into details today here on Mostly Money. Well, my name is Andre, and you're watching Mostly Money, where you're going to get all facts, no fake, no phony, and no fluffed up information when it comes to what's going on in politics today. And if you're interested in getting the truth on a daily basis, well, you've made it to the right channel. All you have to do for yourself now is subscribe. Click that notification bell so you can get the latest and greatest information coming from Mostly Money, because we're going to always be here for you and your loved ones. Let's get started. Yes, Senator Cory Booker just recently gave a speech in Congress in regards to how important it is to have this next round of not only stimulus checks that have been going on until the end of the year, but also the child tax credit stimulus checks continue on to 2025. There's a reason. It's not just for the kids, it's not just for the parents, but it's also for you 15 million grandparents that are raising your grandchildren today.
I see this as a moral issue, but he has shown this is an economic issue. We are the wealthiest nation on the planet Earth, and of the top 41 countries, we're at 38 in poor kids. And what he pointed out is that poverty costs all of us. It is a deep self-inflicted wound in this society, because poverty cost this nation over $1 trillion as measured by economists. But I'm telling you right now, economists don't measure all the things that are important. Our GDP does not reflect well-being. It doesn't reflect how many antidepressants people take or how many child deaths there are. But the truth of our economy is every dollar we invest in getting children out of poverty returns $8 to this economy. So it is an economic issue, clearly. It is a globally competitive issue, because the nation in a global knowledge-based society, the nation whose children learn the most will earn the most and will outcompete. It is a national security issue, as we go up against countries like China, whose top 10% of their graduating high school classes outnumber all the children we have. But it is a moral issue most of all. If we are going to create a more beloved community, how do we treat our children? Children who live in poverty literally have physical effects. Poverty is violent. Study after study shows that the brain development of children in poverty is inhibited. Literally, the stress hormones, the cortisol, it is akin to an adult having a traffic accident every single day. It is an indicator of childhood trauma. Poverty is a moral obscenity. And we, the richest nation on the planet, that year after year are getting richer, our children are getting poorer. Who are we when we pledge allegiance to a flag and say liberty and justice for all? Who are we? We don't even know the demographic changes in our country. We have cities across America where 1 out of every 10 child is being raised by a grandparent. And so here we're discussing childhood poverty, and some people are talking about work requirements when we know from the data from conservative think tanks to what we see in other nations like Canada that things like the child allowance, or in our country, the child tax credit, increase workforce participation. But if you get rid of the child tax credit, those grandparents raising grandchildren, half of them plunge back into poverty. And the stories are profound. You heard from my colleague in Colorado. We know families in New Jersey, like a woman I just saw named Margarita. She used her child tax credit payments for exactly what so many said they would be used for. She used them for food for her children. for school supplies to keep the electricity running in her house. We've heard stories that they're used for a car bill to get people to work. They're used to pay for childcare that they need for their family so that they can work. Families are not using this money so they can quit their jobs. Quite the contrary, they're using them so they can get to work. Mr. President, we are a nation in crisis because of how we treat our children. The child tax credit is a lifeline for the millions of grandparents raising grandchildren. It's a lifeline for low-income children.
Now, the child tax credit extension is one of the things that they want to do up until 2025 by allowing families to continue to receive that between $250 to $300 a month per child, so the families can be well taken care of as well as the children. This also goes for the 15 million, as I mentioned before, grandparents that are out there raising your grandchildren. So that's why they're putting this in this infrastructure bill. So inside the infrastructure bill that we've all been waiting for, the negotiations, the reason why senators are saying that they want it to be 3.5, this is one of the reasons, because Senator Booker is absolutely correct when he says, what type of country are we if we cannot be there at least for our children? And when it comes to the infrastructure bill, we still have a long way to go with the negotiations. Now, yesterday, the president has already announced that he wants negotiations to begin to take place in regards to the price, but yet there are those that are still stern when it comes to making changes, because to change the price means to change what programs will be able to go off into the infrastructure bills.
There is a lot of focus, and a lot of the negotiating is on that top line number. For example, is $2 trillion, $2.1 trillion, your absolute floor?
We're not thinking about the number. And the president said this to us, too. He said, don't start with the number. Start with what you're for, and that's what he's asked them for. And then let's come to the number from there. So that's how we're thinking about it.
And that makes sense. But you have been looking at this for a long time. You have been looking at the policies and what it adds up to and how you can do it. I mean, this is what your focus has been almost solely.
Yeah.
So I'm sure have looked at whether or not you can do what you want to do for $2 trillion.
Well, we don't know what the number is yet. There's no number on the table yet that is everyone has agreed to. It's not like they've come to us and said, I don't feel the need to give a number because I gave my number. It was 3.5. So if you're in a negotiation, you need to have a counteroffer before you bid against yourself.
So if we're not looking at numbers, what about 1.5, like what Senator
Well,
Manchin
that's not going to happen.
But
so it's going to be somewhere.
Well, why won't it add up to that
because
number?
That's too small to get our priorities in. So it's going to be somewhere, between 1.5 and 3.5. And I think the White House is working on that right now, because remember, what we want to deliver is childcare, paid leave, climate change.
And I want to get to that, but so 1.5 is too small, but you won't say if $2 trillion is too small.
Because I don't have a definite number yet. I mean, I don't have a counteroffer.
Okay.
It would be like buying a house, Dana, and going in to make an offer, and then somebody says, well, what's the lowest number you would take? Why would I do that?
And even though the infrastructure bill is extremely important for all of us who need these programs, especially during this pandemic, what individuals have to realize is that for the most part, they're trying to do this under reconciliations. Realize they only get 3 reconciliations per fiscal year. We already know fiscal years for the federal government are from September to September. That's why they just had to renegotiate the budget. That's why they just recently had to negotiate in regards to what the new federal budget would be, because September is just passed. So therefore, what they're looking at right now is trying to put together the programs as well as the budget for next year. And part of this budget are the reconciliation bills, which are the infrastructure bills. Now, here's the plan of the Republican Party. Republicans plan on doing this. They plan on just sitting back waiting with their arms folded, because they know that only 3 reconciliations can be used. The first reconciliation that they realize that the Democratic Party is going to be using is the reconciliation regarding the infrastructure stimulus bill, the American Family Plan, that $3.5 trillion, if we can get Joe Manchin as well as Kyrsten Sinema back on board. That's the first one. Second, and the most important one, is the debt ceiling. If that debt ceiling doesn't take place, what could happen is an international economic catastrophe.
So lost in all of this debate over infrastructure is the debt ceiling. frankly, much more time-pressing than infrastructure's sort of self-imposed deadlines. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki addressed this yesterday. Listen to this.
Republicans are playing politics with an economic catastrophe, and they're treating a calamity for working families like a DC game. There are huge impacts here. You touched on the fact, but let me give the public a little sense of that. An instant recession, 6 million jobs lost, 15 trillion in savings wiped out, Social Security checks and payments to our troops blocked. Those are real impacts. Republicans in Congress are treating this like a game.
Leader Schumer insists the GOP will come to its senses. Optimistic as this October 18th deadline reaches closer. But one senior GOP aide, John, is telling CNN Republicans could hold out, quote, longer than Biden and the Democrats. That's for sure. Do you think it's true?
Probably.
Yeah.
Look, Biden and the Democrats are the governing party. They're in charge. This is a true game of chicken where if the two cars collide, the world economy blows up.
Yeah.
And it is true that Republicans are playing political games, trying to extract a political pound of flesh from Democrats. But Democrats do have the power to do it as part of this reconciliation process. It's difficult. It's time consuming. But if you're the president of the United States and you're trying to avoid what would be catastrophic for the economy on your watch and on everybody else's watch, the path of least resistance may be to go ahead and do it on your own through the mechanism of reconciliation. Don't know that that's going to happen. And we did get a little blink from Mitch McConnell earlier in the week when he said, well, I'll make the reconciliation path easier. That was an accommodation that McConnell was offering. Will that be the last accommodation he offers? You know, that's something that Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer are going to have to make a decision about. But I suspect that they will end up deciding to do it through reconciliation. And the debt limit will get raised. The question is, how much of a white-knuckle time for markets and for political leaders is it going to be?
Whether we want to admit it or not, negotiations for the debt ceiling is a must. October 18th is right around the corner. Now, why is it that the Republican Party says that we are going to remain hands off? It's because of this. They know that the raising of the debt ceiling, as I mentioned before in past videos, will give Democrats a lot more money to work with on our behalf for the next year. So if they raise the debt ceiling, a lot of programs that we've been hoping for, another round of stimulus payments, making sure that Medicare is expanded, making sure that child tax credit is expanded. All these programs that want the Veterans Administration to advance, as well as monies for Social Security Administration, as well as improving the IRS. All this money is going to be a part of the infrastructure bills. However, the only way they'll be able to be completely paid for is not just by tax money that they're going to receive from corporations, but also by raising the debt ceiling. And the Republican Party knows that with the elections coming up next year, they're trying to do all that they can to make the Democratic Party, well, not look so good. So this is why they do not want to see one party receive the monies that they need to improve the country, even if it's going to help out millions of Americans. Well, my name is Andre of Mostly Money, and I'm here to give you all facts. No fake, no phony, and no fluffed up information when it comes to what's going on in politics today. And if you're interested in getting the truth on a daily basis, well, you've made it to the right channel. All you need to do for yourself now is subscribe. Click that bell notification so you can get the latest and greatest information coming from Mostly Money, because we're going to always be here for you and your loved ones. I'm on my way to the comment section. Thank you guys for clicking that like button. And also, if I don't get a chance to speak to you and you don't get a chance to speak to me, we are not going to fret about it, because you'll be hearing from me again.